Welcome to you all from the International Institute of Higher Education Research and Capacity Building and Office of Rankings, Benchmarking and Institutional Transformation, OP Jindal Global University. I am Dr. Moshmi Mukherjee, Assistant Director of the International Institute of Higher Education, and several of our colleagues from IIHT and Orbits, which are the short acronyms of the two offices, are here along with several of our professors this morning and invited guests. We are about to inaugurate this conference, two-day conference on promoting a culture of excellence in universities, role of rankings and benchmarking. When we talk about culture, we all know that cultures evolve over a certain period of time. Often the cultures are resistant to change, but then cultures also change over time. Over this 2 days, we are going to deliberate on these issues, how we can promote a culture of excellence in universities, and what is the role of rankings and benchmarkings in promoting this culture of excellence. All of you must have read our concept notes, so I'm not going to elaborate too much on our title for this conference. I'm now going to invite Professor C. Rajkumar, a founding Vice Chancellor of our university, OP Jindal Global University, and Director of the International Institute of Higher Education Research and Capacity Building, to deliver his welcome address. Professor Kumar.
Very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you for participating in this conference on promoting a culture of excellence in universities. I was always very concerned about doing a conference in November, particularly on a Sunday morning, and I think that one of the challenges of doing it at a time when the semester is also ended and examinations are on, and most faculty have left the campus, is that to be able to have a larger participation. Nevertheless, we wanted to have this conversation because there are a number of big changes and issues relating to higher education that are being discussed at multiple levels, not only forums in India, but also in other parts of the world, that it is important to have this conversation sooner than later, and hence we decided to have this conference. I am grateful to all of you, in particular our guest of honor, starting with Professor Dr. Pankaj Mittal, Additional Secretary of the University Grants Commission, a very dear friend of the university since her days as the Vice Chancellor of BPS Mahila, Professor Dr. Iron Reinsberg, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, currently at King's College, London, and also our friend from Ajman University, Professor Khalid Asela, Vice Chancellor of the Ajman University, UAE. I also want to recognize the presence of the Vice Chancellor of SRM University, Dr. Prakash, and also his colleagues and others who have joined from our neighboring institutions, my deans of public policy and liberal arts, Professor Sudarshan and Professor Kathleen Modrowski, Professor Stephen Marks from Harvard, and other colleagues who are here. I believe that in terms of the timing of the conversation, I think it's useful to mention that the history and evolution of Indian universities, starting with its early days of at least post-independent India, of barely 20 plus universities, and today's expansion in the higher education sector, somewhere along the way we might have, let's say, not paid attention, or at least adequate attention, to the need for promoting excellence in our institutions, and more importantly, to develop a culture of excellence within our universities. And because of that, it has also been brought to both in policy making as well as recognition within higher education institutions that there has been mediocrity deeply institutionalized and embedded in many institutional cultures, not just in India but also beyond. There is a good part of the focus of this conference which is at least looking at in the BRICS region, including China and South Africa and other countries in Africa too. But the point which I would like to really make is that the theme of this conference is to focus on culture of excellence. And now, of course, that theme has two dimensions to it, and we are also juxtaposing it with the need for looking at rankings on the one hand, and the need for examining benchmarking practices, best practices from around the world, and how those two aspects could contribute and inform debates surrounding excellence. Now, I would like to first say that this particular issue of if I look at an effort to promote excellence, it is only fair to say that much of the efforts to promote excellence in Indian higher education system has focused its attention on the entry restrictions of the universities and the kind of students who will come into universities. So if you look at the great public universities across the country, it was widely recognized that it's very difficult to get into the leading public universities in India. And that was the focus of the entire university administration, the admissions process, and also all the reputation that Indian universities had for a very long time was drawn by the fact that the best and the brightest in terms of those who have been able to go through a very rigorous examination process, those who have secured very high grades in their high school examinations or undergraduate examinations, those who have done exceedingly well in the entrance examinations to entry into these institutions, they only get to study in the leading Indian universities and colleges. And so in some ways, entry barriers and entry restrictions became the sort of framework to promote excellence. And to a large extent, India succeeded in it. These universities and colleges, very famously a few years ago, one of the leading colleges in India, in Delhi University, claimed that, for those of you who may not be familiar with this, we have a cut-off system in India, and those students who have secured a certain percentage in their high school examination can only enter into certain colleges. And this particular college famously claimed that they have secured 100% cutoff for entry into this particular college. And of course, for those of us who were in education, found it ludicrous to even have such a framework for entry into colleges. But for lack of any other better model and lack of imagination and innovation in the way we select students, this ended up becoming the most effective model. And of course, it is also important to mention that India has historically attempted to use different forms of cut-off models or entrance examination models primarily to ensure that merit and merit only remains a criteria for entry into universities, and excellence and reputation is built around the system of merit. And of course, that helped the universities and colleges in general to acquire a reputation and ultimately have these bright students graduate out of these colleges and universities and end up doing very well in life. Now, beyond this focus on excellence, when it comes to many other aspects of what universities do, I'm afraid we have a lot more to do, whether it is in the context of curriculum development, interdisciplinarity, focus on research and knowledge creation, ability of faculty to contribute to publications, experiential learning, including innovative pedagogy, all these areas that are very much fundamental to what universities ought to be doing. We have done very little in the last several decades. For those of us who have gone through the Indian higher education system and have had the privilege of studying in universities in other parts of the world, we would appreciate how much the higher education models and practices have evolved in different parts of the world. Now, I also want to quickly mention that this is not something which is not recognized by the policymakers and the powers that be. The last, I would say, decade has seen extraordinary internal criticism that has been prevailing in India, and I must say that while many of us in higher education are at times quite rightly critical of the methodology that is adopted by rankings agencies and which creates illegitimate incentives for universities to pursue for the sake of rankings, the fact remains that rankings discourse in India has brought a greater sense of accountability, an internal sense of institutional scrutiny, and more importantly, an opportunity to reimagine institutions and to position themselves for promoting what I call the culture of excellence as well. Now, and I will say one thing that I remember very vividly, that the former president of India, when he began speaking at universities, nearly 6, 7, 8 years ago, just after 8 years ago, just after his presidency, he began very vociferously making an argument about the fact that, and it was something which was talked in close quarters, but he began shaming universities in India and even higher education system, that not a single Indian university is among the top 200 in the world. And that shaming process that he initiated was not only limited to him. You began to hear more often. And even when he began with those speeches in the early days of his presidency, people were not taking much note of it. But then more and more, if you begin to speak that, quite frequently, and in every speech he underlined that, and he didn't stop at that. He began the visitors' conferences. He began with a stronger and a more deeper and pervasive engagement with the higher education system, the regulatory bodies, including the UGC, but also the Ministry of Human Resource Development. There was a greater sense of appreciation of the need for Indian universities to be moving towards, while emphasis was on rankings, the real effort was to see how we can promote excellence as a part of a culture within Indian universities. Of course, the rankings organizations were also very mindful of that. Very quickly they realized that since none of the Indian universities are one of the top 200 in the world, and India was beginning to be concerned about it, there were the two interesting and very different set of responses that were coming from institutions. The government of India probably in its wisdom felt that since we are not having Indian universities in any of the top rankings, and government of India for most part of the discourse was disappointed with the methodology of the rankings organizations, and somehow felt that Indian universities deserve to be in the top rankings, so came up with the India's own rankings known as the National Institutional Ranking Framework, which I thought was completely unnecessary, but nevertheless we ended up pursuing that and formulated an NIRF. Now that was Government of India's response. We can't be part of the international rankings. We will have our own rankings, and we will rank Indian universities in the methodology and criteria that we think it's legitimate and right. The rankings agencies became smarter in that. They initially had the big, world university rankings, and obviously none of the universities in India or Africa or other parts of the developing world were not there. And of course, the IIT directors famously, dismissed these rankings and said that the rankings do not reflect what we really do. We are truly world class, and the rankings do not appreciate what we're doing. And very quickly, the rankings organization changed their approach and began to come up with more rankings. They launched the BRICS rankings, the Asia rankings, the subject rankings, and very soon these IITs, which were just not there in any of these rankings, suddenly begin to appear in the BRICS rankings as a leading leading university in the BRICS, as a leading university in Asia, as a leading university in the subject. In fact, they became the top world-class universities in the subjects because, after all, IITs were good at what they were doing. And soon, these IIT directors who were dismissive of rankings began to showcase their achievements in the rankings, began to have press conferences and publicize their rankings achievements quite remarkably. A dramatic transformation, legitimization of rankings happened very quickly in India. In fact, those who were very skeptical of rankings had to eat humble pie very quickly, because this dramatic transformation happened in a span of 3 to 4 years. And not only that, the rankings discourse went deep into institutions such as the University Grants Commission, the Ministry of Human Resource Development, of course led by the President of India himself, and you began to see the Prime Minister, the HRD Minister, and all major policymakers talking about rankings and benchmarking more seriously. And of course, I would say the icing on the cake ended up happening just last year, when the Government of India initiated the policy relating to determining institutes of eminence, quite remarkably. And I don't know of any country in the world where a gazette notification has been issued with the single minded goal and purpose of seeing institutions, universities to be declared as institutes of eminence, and the criteria for assessment or determination should be that their potential to be in the 3 world rankings, the Times Higher Education, the QS, and the Shanghai Jiatong rankings. These 3 names of rankings agencies have been gazette notified under the Government of India rules and regulations. Quite a transformation happened in barely 5 to 6 years. So in some ways, I wanted to trace this institutional history simply to bring home the larger point that India has rapidly changed in terms of its mindset and its approach towards towards promoting a culture of excellence. Not to say that having rankings and benchmarking practices is the only way to promote a culture of excellence. It's the other way around, which is that we need to be promoting a culture of excellence in universities, which will enable us to be faring well in rankings and benchmarking. With those words, I would like to once again congratulate the International Institute for Higher Education Research and Capacity Building, also Orbit, the Office of Rankings and Benchmarking and Institutional Transformation that we have established in the university, and also other faculty members and research fellows who were involved in putting together this program. I can only hope that the next 2 days of deliberations will help us evolve certain informed knowledge and understanding as to what we really need to do as institutions as we think about building a culture of excellence in our universities. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar, for that inaugural address. I would now like to I'd now like to welcome Professor Pankaj Mittal, who is Additional Secretary, University Grants Commission of India, to deliver the welcome address. Inaugural address, yes. This shows I'm a little stressed.
A very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Rajkumar, one of the most dynamic Vice Chancellors of India, who is leading the Jindal Global University, for inviting me here to have an interaction with all of you. The topic of the conference, Promoting a Culture of Excellence in Universities, Role of Rankings and Benchmarking, very well thought of and sort of need of the hour. And he has already said so many things about the ranking and the benchmarking and what is the need of the ranking, because it induces a sense of competition. It sort of even tells the institutions what are their shortcomings so that they can improve them in the times to come. And so many things he has talked about UGC, Government of India, about NIRF. So I think I'll be responding to some of the issues which he has raised. The foremost issue is the role of regulators. So in India, most of the times the institutions are sort of apprehensive about the roles of the regulators. Like we have UGC is the main regulator, University Grants Commission, which emanates from the Constitution of India, Entry 66, which is coordination and maintenance of standards. Apart from UGC, there are 17 statutory professional councils which are managing the specific subject areas like AICT for engineering and technology, Medical Council for medical, Dental Council, Nursing Council, NCT, National Council for Teacher Education. But most of the times, these regulators are perceived as stumbling blocks, as impediments in the road to excellence. It is seen that, okay, these are the regulators, and they will sort of, instead of enabling excellence, which was sort of a thrust of Professor Rajkumar's speech, that instead of being enablers of excellence, they are prohibiting or inhibiting the excellence. So I thought I will answer this question today. When we talk of regulators, recently there was a conference in CII where I was representing UGC, and the topic was changing role of regulators. Is the role of regulators the same as it was, or should it be the same, or should it be changing? And if it has to change, what sort of changing role should be there on the part of the regulators? So I was responding to that. So I will focus my talk today on the changing role of regulators for promoting excellence. And just now Professor Sudarshan was saying that he remembered me because of a story I told somewhere. So I thought I'll start with a story. Different story altogether. Maybe our friends, I have some friends from BPS who are here. Dr. Sanket is there, Ravi Bhushan is there. My friends from UGC, Dr. Prakash is here. So I'll start with a story because you two must have heard that story. Because I'm coming from a university, I was the Vice Chancellor of a university which emanated from a Gurukul. So I'll tell you the story of a Gurukul. This is a conversation between the student and a teacher. So in this Gurukul, for our foreign experts sitting here, Gurukul was a institution of learning where it was a residential learning institution where the student was learning entirely from the Guru, not only in the classes, but because he used to treat Guru as a role model. So he was even imbibing whatever the Guru was doing in the daily routine also. And there was a free, like nowadays many times he says that free interaction is not possible. In Gurukul, free interaction was also possible. So this student is asking the Guruji, you are saying that the God exists. If God exists, why I am not able to see the God? Because I am able to see this table, chair, everything, whatever is existing. Why I am not able to see the God? The Guru says, okay, are you seeing the bell hanging in the middle of the room? He says, yes, I am able to see the bell, and that proves my point. That bell is there, so I am able to see it. I am not able to see the God. See, if you were blind, the Guru says, if you were blind, will you still see the bell? He says, okay, I won't be able to see the bell, but I will be able to hear the bell. God, I cannot even hear. He says, okay, if you are blind and deaf, will you see the bell or hear the bell? He says, no, I won't be able to see the bell, I won't be able to hear the bell, but I will be able to touch the bell and tell that the bell is there. Student was smart, maybe from Jindal. So the God says, okay, suppose you are not able to see, you are not able to hear, and you lose the sense of touch. So will you be able to hear the bell? Or will you be able to know the existence of the bell? He says, if I am not able to see, if I am not able to hear, and if I am not able to touch, I will not be knowing about the existence of the bell. But now it was the Guru's turn. He says, but the bell is there. The simple thing that you just don't have these three senses doesn't negate the presence of the bell. So similarly, if you want to see the God, you have to inculcate that power to see the God. Then only you will be able to see the God. Now, who will inculcate all that power into the student? The Guru, the teacher sitting here. You have to inculcate that power in your students so that they are able to see what is not ordinarily visible to them. So it is the duty of the duty of the teacher, the Guru, to inculcate all those powers into the student. Now, for a minute, just replace the student with an educational institution and the teacher with the regulator. So who will sort of give all those vision, direction, power to the institution? Obviously regulator. But now Dr. Rajkumar will argue that we don't need a regulator. Our institutions are good enough to regulate themselves. They know their vision, they know their path. So we don't need you. But then again, you should appreciate that every institution in our country is not Jindal. Every institution is not IIT, every institution is not IIM. We have institutions like BPS who need a lot of hand holding. So for that, regulators are required to handhold these institutions. Like again, our HRM, Dr. Shri Prakash Javadekar, he keeps on saying in many conferences that regulating is a very tricky job, because if you make regulations keeping good institutions in mind, the bad ones go scot-free. And if you make the regulations keeping bad ones in mind, the good ones are punished. Therefore, it's a very, very tricky job. So to solve that problem, what UGC did was to bring that regulation of graded autonomy. So in that graded autonomy regulation, we are grading the institutions in 3 categories based on the NAC rating. The top ones are more than 3.51 and above. The grade 2 are 3.26 to 3.5, and the rest are in grade 3. So grade 1 are given complete autonomy. Jindal is in grade 1. Grade 2? So grade 1 is given complete autonomy, including automatic 12B, or even whatever amount of foreign students you can admit, ODL, online, foreign faculty, foreign collaborations, complete autonomy is given to them. Grade 2, a little less, except for I think automatic 12B and ODL, rest all autonomy is given to them. But for grade 3, we are trying to handhold them. We are trying to handhold so that, because many of them don't know what to do. So we have to handhold, and many of them are not even following the right path to excellence. So we are trying to handhold them. In fact, UGC has recently come out with a quality mandate. In a quality mandate, we have indicated 5 objectives and the 10 tasks. So I gave a copy of the quality mandate to Professor Rajkumar the other day. So the 5 objectives are, first, that we will strive to see that the pass outs, at least 50% of our pass outs are employed in corporate sector, or they are self-employed, or they are into higher education. So at least 50% of them should be in this employable at least. And then second is that we should promote society-university linkages. Right now, most of our universities, barring few, are working like, say, factories, putting student on the assembly line in the beginning of the session or beginning of the program and producing a graduate after 3 years without any vision, without any purpose, without him having any connect with the society. Rather, our institutions also do not have any connect with the society. We are very happy within the 4 walls of the university, and we are not having any connect with the outside world. So promoting university-society linkages. Third mandate is to train the students in essential skills. Many times we say, like in CII report also, it says that many of our professional graduates, to the extent of about 78% of our graduates, are not employed, not employable. So unemployment is not a bigger thing. Unemployability is a bigger thing. So 78% of our professional graduates, not only simple graduates, professional graduates are unemployable. So to take care of that, we are saying that we should train students in the essential skills. Fourth objective is that the teacher vacancies. This is a private university, but in many government universities, including IITs and central universities, about 30 to 40% of teachers' posts are lying vacant. So we are saying that no institution should be there where teacher vacancy should exceed 10%. And then fifth and the last objective is that every institution, these institutions are good institutions, are having high NAC ranking, but every institution in the country, we have something like 900 universities, more than 900 universities and more than 40,000 colleges. So every institution should have a NAC rating of not less than 2.5. 2.5 we have kept a lower figure because keeping the diversity of the country in mind. So for meeting these 5 quality mandates, UGC is taking many steps. Like graded autonomy was one. At the institutional level, it is graded autonomy, then institution of eminence, which Dr. Rajkumar has already spoken of. This was basically when the president, he was mentioning that again and again when we were told that no Indian university is figuring in the top world rankings. So we thought we should sort of push our institutions to come in the world ranking. And to push them, we wanted to, especially to the government institutions, we wanted to give them liberal funding and to the private institutions liberal autonomy. So we conceived this scheme of institution of eminence. It's not that we are branding them institution of eminence, but we are branding them institution of eminence to sort of encourage them to come into the world ranking institutions. So that we have decided that 10 government and 10 private will be selected, and to the government institutions we will be giving a liberal funding of 1,000 crores for the 5-year period, so that they can have the facilities, they can create the facilities to come up to the world ranking. So institution of eminence, already we have selected 3 in the government and the 3 in the private sector. The rest are going on. Then NIRF again. NIRF, why we brought in was, many of our institutions, in most of the conferences, the vice chancellors, they were cribbing that we are not coming in the rankings because the rankings do not measure those parameters on which we are excelling. And they are, for example, reputation. The reputation survey is one of the major parameters which is used for ranking. In our institutions, there is no sort of methodology for knowing which institution is good, which is bad. So reputation was one. And then high-end research. Many of our institutions are not doing high-end research, but they are doing many other things which these rankings, global rankings, were not measuring. Therefore, we came up with our own NIRF ranking, not with the view that you should be here and be satisfied, but with the view that once you are in NIRF ranking, slowly you progress and come into the world rankings also. So this was one at the institutional level. And at the teachers level, we have recently, last week, started a scheme called ARPIT. This is an annual refresher teaching program in which every teacher annually has to update the skills by attending these course. This will be an online course on the Swayam platform. So ARPIT is a program for sort of improving the teachers. And then apart from ARPIT, one more scheme which we have recently launched is LEAP, leadership program. Leadership, I mean, we are, it is often said that maybe I should say even the teachers in the universities, they are not trained to teach. After doing MSc, PhD, they are appointed as teachers. But in the school level, the teachers are trained. Similarly, we have 900 universities and 40,000 colleges. But none of the leaders of these institutions are trained in any manner to manage these higher education institutions. So what a new scheme which has been launched by the Government of India is that there will be a training of the potential vice chancellors who are going to manage the higher education institutions in future to sort of bring them up to that level that they can manage the higher education institutions. So something like 200 people we will be training every year. It will be a 3 weeks training program, 2 weeks in India and 1 week in abroad. Our 15 higher education institutions from India have been selected for imparting the training. And those 15 have in turn collaborated with foreign counterparts. And they're good universities. It is Harvard, Michigan, Oxford, National University of Singapore. Like these good universities, they have partnered with. And 2 weeks India and 1 week abroad training program has been envisaged for the potential educational administrators. So this is for the teachers. And for the students, like you would appreciate that no regulator is making the online courses. They are not developing the e-content for the students. But UGC, as a regulator, we are developing e-content for the students, both at the UG as well as the PG level. Something like 23,000 videos for the PG programs and more than 60,000 videos for the undergraduate programs are already uploaded on the website, on the UGC website, on the InfluMnet website, so that the students can make use of the quality content in different subject areas. Similarly, there was a problem faced especially by foreign universities regarding recognizing of Indian universities or verification of Indian degrees. So we came out with a scheme called National Academic Depository, in which the dematting of degrees is there, sort of digital degrees is there. There are two, NDL and CVL, there are two depositors where every institution has to put their degree in that depository, and the verification of degree will be only a 2 hours job, not months which it was going to take together. And then we are also, because we were also accused, or not we, but these higher education institutions were accused, the curriculum they are teaching is not relevant, and then it is not learning outcome based. So we have now made about 37 committees to make curriculum in different subjects which is based on the learning outcomes. So they are making the curriculum at the UG level in the beginning, which will, again, we are not going to force this curriculum on the institution. It will work as a model curricula which the institutions can adopt if they wish to, and if they want to improve it, they can improve it. So like this, we are trying to make learning outcome based curricula. And the last I will talk about is MOOCs. MOOCs is a massive open online courses, and I think India is the first country which is giving credit transfers for MOOCs. So in a PG program, if you are doing the regular programs, and in a regular program, if you find that for a particular course the teacher is not available, or if the teacher is not good, and if you want to do that program through online, then there are MOOCs courses available on the SWAYAM platform. SWAYAM is an indigenous platform of Government of India, just like edX and Coursera. And if you do that MOOCs program on that SWAYAM platform, the 20% credit weightage can be given to the student in the PG program. So these type of initiatives we are bringing out, and right now around 2000 MOOCs courses are already on the SWAYAM portal, and many students are undertaking. There's a lot of good response from the students for undertaking these programs. Even the ARPIT program, that is also launched on the SWAYAM platform, so those teachers can also take benefit of the programs, and they can update their knowledge. So like this, I think regulators are also trying their best to promote the excellence. Whatever we can do, we are doing, and of course there are many more things which can be done. And in these conferences or these type of interactions, we also come to know, because everybody is evolving. We are evolving, institutions are evolving. So whatever more is to be done, we are continuously striving to do that. So thank you very much. Thanks for calling me. Thank you very much.